Good morning. I'm going to recap really quick what we read yesterday, but before I do that, I want to discuss a man. I want to ask for prayer for a man. His name is Robert Roberson, and he is a death row inmate in Texas. In 2001, his daughter Nikki passed away. She had pneumonia and she was sick. She had diarrhea. She had a chapped bottom end. And there were some things that he did that were kind of odd to people because, well, Robert Roberson is autistic. And so his mannerisms don't quite match what people expect people should react like because his emotions are contained differently. And I understand this because I am autistic and my son is autistic. And so I really feel for this man because I understand the misunderstanding that has led him to be condemned. Well, they discovered that they were wrong. They even had a nurse wrongfully accuse him of SA. And she had diarrhea and was chapped on her bottom end. And the chapping and the cracking that happens is what that accusation was based on. And it was confirmed when a doctor and a pediatrician looked at her when she had pneumonia and they had prescribed medication for this sort of thing. In the long run, Texas, in the last minute, Thursday night, stayed his execution and subpoenaed him to a House meeting. And that House meeting is taking place currently. It started yesterday and it went all day, way late into the night. And I heard from people like Dr. Phil when I went back and I watched. And I heard one of the jury members from the original jury who was not happy with the way that case went. We heard about how the judge should have been recused. We heard about how evidence was altered, things were blatantly lied about, things that should have been allotted to him were refused, and they are really considering saving his life, which I am all for because we have discussed the mark of Cain. You don't red rum a red rummer. You don't red rum, but you don't red rum a red rummer. Especially in this case because Robert Roberson is not a red rummer. What happened to his daughter, Nikki, was tragic. And they would not even let him see her. They took away all of his rights to take care of her final resting plans. And in the end of it, my heart is going out to this man, and my prayers are going out that this meeting exonerates him. So you all believe in God. You all have the same power I have to ask God. So I implore you to ask God on behalf of our nation not spilling any more innocent blood. That this House committee is successful in what they set out to do. And this man be given back his life. Thank you for listening to that. Now I'm going to move back on to where we left off. Yesterday, we picked up where Jacob had been sorting speckled and rain-soaked and blemished, quote-unquote, cattle and goats and lambs for himself and leaving the unblemished for Laban. And he left. That's what he did. He said, we're done. He loaded up his wives, all of his children. Then, unbeknownst to him, on the way out, Rachel stole her father's gods. Because remember, Jacob was sent back to Abraham's family to find a wife. And Abraham's family worshipped false gods, offered up their little ones to their deities, amongst many other things that God found offensive. Had multiple wives. So we know that Laban had gods, and we know that Rachel took them. And so Laban pursues and makes some threats, and Jacob says, I will end whoever has your idols, but I don't have them. Go search. And he searches, and when he gets to Rachel's room, she or tent. She sits on it describes it as the couch for the camel. It's like the saddle. She stuck him underneath the saddle, sat down on the saddle, and said that she was having the way of women. And any female at the appropriate age understands what this is. And in that culture, women were not allowed to stand, or even, they were separated. They were sent to be alone. So she made that excuse, and he could not argue with her. He did not make her stand. He searched her tent, did not find his idols, made a covenant that they would not cross paths again to fight, kissed his grandchildren and his daughters goodbye, and they went their separate ways. And after that happened, Jacob had a run-in with what the Bible describes as a man who he wrestles with, who we all find out is God. And, well, an angel or God. It's one of those two. It's very blurry to me. And I am not a scholar. I read it on my own. So I will go back and I will say he was holy. And Jacob wrestled with all his might all night long. And he would not give up until he was blessed. And he was blessed, but he was also harmed, because the man reached out and touched his right thigh and shrunk the muscle, the sinew. Is in Jewish culture not eaten out of a lamb because of this. And it's even explained in the Bible that it's why you don't eat the thigh, because of the shrunken sinew. Well, it's in honor of the fact that even though he was blessed, but he took a curse to take that blessing. He had to fight for that, and he was given a battle scar to show that he did it. So they move on and they settle and they come into this land, Shechem. And I read the story yesterday and I didn't touch on it because it's a devastating story. Dinah is Leah's daughter, and if I am not mistaken, she is the only daughter of Jacob. And in his lust, the prince of Shechem defiled Dinah. And then the sons of Jacob deceived the males and said, okay, we'll trade daughters with you if you go and circumcise yourself. And while they were in pain from doing this, Levi and Simeon attacked the town and took out all the males who were in pain and could not move. And Jacob was angry with them for that. He said that you caused me to stink to all the surrounding nations. But this story has a little bit of something in it that when I was a kid, this was one of those quiet little kids don't hear stories, keep it down. And maybe if it was more brought out to light, because these acts didn't happen as frequently during the times that I was going to school. And when they did, they didn't let younger kids hear about them because this was not considered child appropriate. But there is something in here that is very woman appropriate that needs to be brought to light. And that is, even though Dinah was defiled, Jacob's sons, who carry on the spirit and the covenant, because there are 12 tribes and Levi and Simeon are in those tribes. And I do believe Judah was a part of this, but I know for sure it was Simeon and Levi. Felt that she was special enough and important enough and belonged into the family enough that they deleted the entire town and made a havoc to redeem her back. I want you to think about what I just said there, because there are a lot of women, men, and children who suffer from this very same defilation that Dinah did. And what they're not being told in the Bible, the part that doesn't come out, is that even though they were defiled and hurt, they were worth redeeming. And hallelujah, so are you. So that was a part of Dinah's story that I felt I really wanted to bring out, because I know I've been seeing a lot of videos about it, but the big healing words are not there, that Dinah was worth redeeming despite being defiled. And if you have been defiled, you are worth redeeming just the same. So after this, Jacob goes and he meets with Esau. He gives Esau flax and he sets up a booth. And then what we got into, Rachel passed away after she gave birth to Benjamin, and she was laid to rest. And then we learned about Esau's sons, and we need to remember that Esau, he has kings. He created countries too. He went to Ishmael's line to find a wife, and so there from him come dukes. And we learned about the lines of the dukes, and that was at the end of chapter 36. Now we know that now we are on to Jacob in the land of Canaan, where God had sent him when he wrestled with him and sent him away with Leah. He gets to the land of Canaan. Genesis chapter 37. And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brother, and the lad was with the sons of Bilhah, and with the sons of Zilpah, and his father's wives. And Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors. And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him, and they could not speak peaceably unto him. And Joseph dreamed a dream, and he told it his brethren, and they hated him yet the more. And he said unto him, Hear, I pray you, this dream which I have dreamed. For behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and lo, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and behold, your sheaves stood round about and made obedience to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, Shalt thou indeed reign over us? Or shalt thou indeed have dominion over us? And they hated him yet the more for his dreams and for his words. And he dreamed yet another dream, and told it his brethren, and said, Behold, I have dreamed a dream more. And behold, the sun and the moon and the 11 stars made obedience to me. And he told it to his father and to his brethren. And his father rebuked him, and said unto him, What is this dream that thou hast dreamed? Shall I and thy mother and thy brethren indeed come to bow down ourselves to thee and to the earth? And his brethren envied him, but his father observed the same. And his brethren went to feed their father's flocks in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, Do not thy brethren feed thy flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said unto him, Here am I. Go, I pray thee, see whether it be well with thy brethren, and well with thy flocks, and bring me word again. So he sent him out of the vale of Hebron, and he came to Shechem. And a certain man found him, and behold, he was wandering in the field. And the man asked him, saying, What seekest thou? And he said, I seek my brethren. Tell me, I pray thee, where they feed their flocks. And the man said, They are departed hence, for I heard them say, Let us go to Dothan. And Joseph went after his brethren, and found them in Dothan. And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him. And they said to one another, Behold, this dreamer cometh. Come now, therefore, and let us slay him, and cast him into some pit. And we will say, Some evil beast hath devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands, and said, Let us not kill him. And Reuben said unto them, Shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him of their hands, to deliver him to his father again. And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread. And they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead, with their camels bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. And there passed by a Midianite merchantman, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and they sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. And they brought Joseph into Egypt. And Reuben returned unto the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. And he rent his clothes, and he returned unto his brethren, and said, The child is not, and I, whither shall I go? And they took Joseph's coat, and killed a kid of the goats, and dipped the coat in the blood. And they set the coat of many colors, that they brought it to their father. And they said, This have we found. Know now whether it be thy son's coat or no. And he knew it, and he said, It is my son's coat. An evil beast hath devoured him. Joseph is without doubt rent in pieces. And Jacob rent his clothes, and put sackcloth upon his loins, and mourned for his son for many days. And all his sons and all his daughters rose up to comfort him. Oh, it says that there are more than one daughter, so I was probably wrong. But it was, in fact, the only daughter of Leah. Because Bilhah and Zilpah must have done more children in there too. But he refused to be comforted, and he said, For I will go down into the grave with my son mourning. Thus his father wept for him. And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, the officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard. And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren, and turned into a certain Adullamite, whose name was Hira. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And he took her and went in unto her. And she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Er. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Chezib, when she bare him. And Judah took a wife for Er his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. And Er, Judah's firstborn, was wicked in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord slew him. And Judah said unto Onan, Go unto thy brother's wife, and marry her, and raise up seed to thy brother. And Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass, when he went in unto his brother's wife, that he spilled it onto the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. And the thing which he did despised the Lord. Wherefore he slew also him. Then said Judah to Tamar his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow at thy father's house till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, Lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. And in the process of time the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted and wept unto his sheep shearers, to Timnath, and to his friend Hira, the Adullamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnah to shear his sheep. And she put her widow's garments off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself and sat in one place, which is by the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way, and said, Go, I pray thee, let me come into thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me, and what thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, Wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And she said, Thy signet, and thy bracelets, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it her. And she came in unto her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away, and laid by veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid by hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand. But he found her not. Then he asked the man of that place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, Let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. And it came to pass about 3 months after that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar by thy daughter-in-law hath played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, Bring her forth, and let her be burnt. And when she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, By the man whose these are am I with child. And she said, Discern, I pray thee, whose are these? The signet and the bracelets and staff. And Judah acknowledged them, and said, She hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah my son, and he knew her again no more. And it came to pass in time of her travail, that behold, twins were in her womb. And it came to pass, when she travailed, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took it and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, This came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out. And she said, How hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. And afterward came out his brother, that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was called Zerah. And Joseph was brought down to Egypt. And Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down there. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him, and he made him overseer over his house, and all that he had put into his hand. And it came to pass from the time that he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of the Lord was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hand. And he knew aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a godly person, and was well favored. And it came to pass after these things, that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and said, Lie with me. But he refused. And he said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in this house, and he committeth all that he had to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me, but thee, because thou art his wife. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her. to lie by her, or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and got him out. And it came to pass, when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me, and fled, and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And she spoke unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, and his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him mercy, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. And the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made it to prosper. And then it came to pass after these things, that the butler of the king of Egypt and his baker had offended their lord the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh was wroth against two of his officers, against the chief of the butlers, and against the chief of the bakers. And he put them in ward in the house of the captain of the guard into the prison, the place where Joseph was bound. And the captain of the guard charged Joseph with them, and he served them, and they continued a season in ward. And they dreamed a dream, both of them, each man in his dream in one night, each man according to the interpretation of his dream, the butler and the baker of the king of Egypt, which were bound in the prison. And Joseph came in unto them in the morning, and looked upon them, and behold, they were sad. And he asked Pharaoh's officers that were with him in the ward of his lord's house, saying, Wherefore look ye so sadly today? And they said unto him, We have dreamed a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. And Joseph said unto them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me them, I pray you. And the chief butler told his dream to Joseph, and said to him, In my dream, behold, a vine was before me. And in the vine were 3 branches, and it was as though it had budded, and her blossoms shot forth, and the clusters thereof brought forth ripe grapes. And Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and pressed them into Pharaoh's cup, and I gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. And Joseph said unto him, This is the interpretation of it. The 3 branches are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thine head, and restore thee unto thy place. And thou shalt deliver Pharaoh's cup into his hand, after the former manner when thou wast his butler. But think on me when it shall be well with thee, and show kindness, I pray thee, unto me, and make mention of me unto Pharaoh, and bring me out of this house. For indeed I was stolen out of the land of the Hebrews, and here also I have done nothing that they should have put me into the dungeon. When the chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, he said unto Joseph, I also was in my dream, and behold, I had 3 white baskets on my head. And in the uppermost basket there was of all manner of baked meats for Pharaoh. And the birds did eat them out of the basket upon my head. And Joseph answered and said, This is the interpretation thereof. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Yet within 3 days shall Pharaoh lift up thy head from off thee, and shall hang thee on a tree, and the birds shall eat thy flesh from off of thee. And it came to pass the 3rd day, which was Pharaoh's birthday, that he made a feast unto all his servants, and he lifted up the head of the chief butler and of the chief baker among his servants, and he restored the chief butler unto his butlership again, and he gave the cup into Pharaoh's hand. But he hanged the chief baker, as Joseph had interpreted to them. Yet did not the chief butler remember Joseph, but forgat him. And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine, and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, the 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and the lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke. And he slept and dreamed the 2nd time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears, and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream. But there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was with us a young man, an Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dream, to each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted it to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself, and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee, that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood up upon the bank of the river, and behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat-fleshed and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored, and lean-fleshed, such as I have never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored, as at the beginning. So I awoke. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered, thin and blasted with the east wind, sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears, blasted with the east wind, shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall rise after them 7 years of famine. And all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass. Now therefore Pharaoh look out a man discreet and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh do this, and let him appoint officers over the land, and take up the 5th part of the land of Egypt in the 7th plenteous years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that come, and lay up the corn under the hand of Pharaoh. And let them keep the food in the cities. And that food shall be stored to the land against the 7 years of famine, which shall be in the land of Egypt, that the land perish not through the famine. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servants, Can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, Forasmuch as God hath shown thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall my people be ruled. Only in the throne will I be greater than thou. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the 2nd chariot which he had, and they cried before him, Bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of the Pharaoh, and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years the earth brought forth by the handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, the food of the field, which was round about every city. He laid it up in the same. And Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much, until he had left numbering, for it was without number. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bare unto him. And Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God said, He hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. And in the 7 years of plenteousness that was in the land of Egypt were ended. And the 7 years of plenteousness that were in the land of Egypt were ended. And the 7 years of dearth began to come according as Joseph has said. And the dearth was in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried out to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith unto you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened up the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all the countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the lands. So just a thought, everybody's wondering about these pyramids, but there was something that did happen in Egypt that would have required buildings like that, with some kind of moisture to keep whatever fruits and vegetables were stored hydrated. And the way it was dug down could have kept it cool. I mean, I know there's some neat things, but we have to remember that Legion walks the earth, and he will defile anything left by God. And I say he, but there are many of them. So we know that there is a slight possibility that the pyramids were the storehouses. And I can't prove it, but it is worth chewing on for a little while. Anyway, God bless you guys today and have a great day.